episode of Investors and Operators, a live episode. I sit down with Gretchen Perkins, partner and head of business development at Avance Investment Management. Gretchen, it is awesome to be live in action.
Indeed.
Let's start off with, if you had a spirit animal, what would it be?
I know you're trying to surprise me with that question because we didn't plan this out, but I already know that answer, and I'm a golden retriever. I had a golden retriever for 13 years, so I was able to observe Jeannie and her personality, and I think I'm a very happy person. Golden retrievers are very happy dogs. They're generally very content. They're pleasers. They like to make people happy, and they like to have fun. And so that's why I say I'm a golden retriever.
There we go. Last flash warm-up question. If you had a walk-out song, a theme song, or genre, what would that be?
It would be something from Beyonce's library for sure.
Please go on.
Oh boy, what song would it be? It would probably be something along the lines of Girls, We Run the World.
Okay. Did you want to sing?
I do, but I'm not going to.
All right, and Beyonce rhymes with?
Avance.
There we go. All right, good. Was that planned on yours?
It was not.
Okay, just it legitimately is your favorite. Okay, got it. Well, I know basically nothing about you growing up.
Really?
I know, the Avance context and where you're at before, and I know you've been doing BD for 20 years, and just. But I don't know anything before that.
Okay.
So let's rewind. I just would love to know, what is the Gretchen Perkins story?
Gretchen Perkins, the early years is really what you're asking for. Chapter 1. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. So I am a native Detroiter. My dad was a minister at the Episcopal Church in downtown Detroit. I was born there. When ministers in the clergy, Episcopalian, they kind of move new ministers around, kind of like the military. And so when I was about 4, they moved my dad to a little farm town in the middle of Michigan, as we do in the state of Michigan, right in the middle. This is the Mitten. This is the Mitten. I was born down here, and I grew up here in a little town called St. John's, Michigan. So I am, yes, a preacher's kid, and one of 3, and had a very idyllic Norman Rockwell-esque growing up. Lots of kids in the neighborhood, kickball every summer night, kick the can, hopscotch. It was really it was a pretty awesome upbringing. After I graduated, I played in the marching band. It was big, defined me as a high school student, being in the marching band. And I also played French horn. I also played in the pit orchestra, so I was a band nerd and loved every minute of it.
What instrument do you think I played in 8th grade?
8th grade.
When there were no other instruments available, but I still wanted to be in the band.
Tuba.
Flute.
All
the other instruments were taken.
I love it.
I came home and my mom's like, "This is gonna last about a week." I wanted, there were girls there. I didn't really think about the branding of the flute in 8th grade.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It literally lasted maybe 4 weeks.
Oh, well, okay. So, yeah, mine was 4 long, great years. And I also played basketball, no surprise. So great upbringing. I graduated from the University of Michigan because my dad was a Wolverine and had gone to University of Michigan and did a great job of brainwashing me that that's the only place I wanted to go. So graduated from the business school at University of Michigan, and first job out of school was at National Bank of Chicago in Chicago when they used to have credit training programs. So that's really where I got my credit training.
Let's rewind a little bit because we skipped over the first 18 years pretty quick.
Okay.
I don't
know how far you wanted to go.
With your dad and growing up in that type of environment, like what did you learn from being exposed to that type of environment where your dad was in the ministry, that is the family identity? Like how did that really shape your upbringing and maybe for the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. My dad was a very progressive minister back in the 60s and 70s, very progressive, inclusive of everyone. We used to have, folks who were very down on their luck, and my dad would let them sleep in the church, in the sacristy, which didn't go over well with many of the church elders. But he said, Jesus was, loved all, and we're supposed to help all, and we're helping these people who need some help. So, we had a lot of different people showing up at our house for dinner, people who were down on their luck. And it really taught me to care and try to be very thankful for what we have, and that we're all really very fortunate, and the world needs to care about each other. And that really is the main takeaway I have from remembering my life as growing up as a minister's daughter. And follow the rules, I was not the stereotype of a preacher kid. I was a rule follower, and make sure you don't embarrass the family. Don't embarrass the family brand, because you're a preacher's kid and everybody's going to be judging you more harshly than other kids. So I felt it.
Is there a particular saying or something that, like a family motto or whatever, that your dad would kind of just say every night, maybe after prayer or something like that?
No, not really. Other than my dad was very, very free with the "I love you kids, I love you neighbor kids, I love," he was a big kid. When we played kickball, my dad could play with, because he didn't have a job where he went to the office. He's right next door at the church all day, every day, and so he could run out and join us. So he was a great dad. My mom is alive still, and she was born in the wrong generation. She is an entrepreneur. She was a stay-at-home mom with all sorts of side gigs back before side gigs were a thing, and she taught me the adaptability and work hard. I did a lot of babysitting as a middle schooler and high schooler to earn money, and just both great. I was very fortunate to grow up with fabulous parents.
What would be if you had to pass along a piece of advice for Jing and I as parents, what would that be?
One of the things that I did as a mom that was my kids to this day still enjoy is, as my kids were growing up and they were learning to talk, or they would, say funny things, I kept what I called the quote board. Piece of paper taped inside a kitchen cupboard, because you're in the kitchen all the time when you have little kids. And when the kids would say something funny, I'd write it down, and I'd write a date, and I'd write the context. And then you just keep taping sheets of paper, because it's always very convenient. That's my method. I didn't need a fancy scrapbook or calligraphy pens, just, whatever you had. And then it would get too fat over the years. And then I put it in a folder and I'd start again.
That is brilliant.
I have done this throughout their lives, less so nowadays, right? But we'll say something like, "Whoa, that's quote board worthy. That's really good." And the kids get a huge kick out of it when they're 10 and they read what they said when they were 2 or 3. And then, the kids' friends, there's always a pack of kids at my house. I wanted to be the house where all the kids' friends wanted to hang out. And so then the kids, the neighbor kids and the friends from school, they'd be trying to get on the quote board. Like, people were like, "Did that make the quote board, Mrs. Perkins?" Like, "No, try it later." And so we have their friends sprinkled throughout. And one Christmas, when my kids were in college, while they were home, they grabbed all those papers from the file and they put them in, like scrapbooks for me. And so I have...
That is absolutely awesome.
My most treasured keepsake. It's fun while you're doing it, and it's really fun years later.
17.
Oh, well, then it's even funnier. Then it's obviously, kids get...
You don't love me. I hate you. You hate me.
Well, there's that. There's a lot of that. There's the quote board where mom says, "Boy, that's pretty ungrateful," again. Indeed. But that has just been something that really gave me a lot of joy. My kids thought it was hilarious, and others as well.
There we go.
Easy to do.
No,
Parent tip 101.
I love it. All right. Well, that's a good transition into your first job.
My first job. First job was at First National Bank of Chicago in the city of Chicago. Big deal from a girl from here. Had done Mitten. When I went to college in Ann Arbor, I thought that was the big city. Then I moved to Chicago and I loved it. I loved the urban environment. I lived right downtown, Lincoln Park, just the classic post-college experience, and was there for about 3 years. And then at that time, relocated back to Michigan to get married and start having kids, and lived there ever since. So my big move to Avance is a giant move. I've spent my entire life for 3 years.
Now, right?
I'm in far warmer weather. Yeah. Hate the snow. Sorry, Michigan.
Love you.
Love you
Mitten.
in the summer. So this has been a fresh start all around for me. It's been great.
So after the first job, what was just kind of keep on walking through it?
Yeah, the next job, when I relocated back to Michigan, I joined Barclays Business Credit, and I was a collateral auditor. So I had to go out for an asset-based lender. We were an asset-based lender. Had to go into the plants and do test counts, inventory test counts, reconcile receivables from the ledgers there with the bank statements. So that was my first job. I was a collateral auditor. And then got promoted over time to business development, and then I was the one out looking for the loan prospects and other younger
people.
people.
The bank that wasn't it. Then you went on a GE.
And then I went to GE Capital after that. Yes. So Barclays, I was at Barclays for 7 years. I think about 7 years. Then I joined GE Capital, which was great. Got me more into cash flow lending, cash flow and asset-based lending in the group that I was with. And then after 3 years, I went back to Barclays, which by that time was called Fleet Capital. They had been acquired. Okay. So I was there for another 3 years. And then frankly, my kids were young. They were 3 and 5 or 4 and 6, and I couldn't do the travel that was required when the private equity firm would say, we want you to come to the management meeting with us. And as a lender, you only get a day or two notice. And I couldn't make that work. And so I call it, I mommy tracked it for about 2 years. 2, 3, no, for longer than that. Maybe a total. No, I had to leave Fleet. I couldn't do that travel, and they told that was the reason I left. And so then I joined an auto industry consulting firm and did business development. I had been lending to all sorts of automotive suppliers because I was based in Detroit, and so I knew that market very well. And now I was just doing sales basically for a consulting product to the automotive industry. So that gave me the flexibility that I needed, and I worked, kind of from 9 to 3 every day for a few years.
It's interesting how the whole idea of the mommy track can now change.
Absolutely.
Because you can say, I can work from home.
Absolutely.
And travel, I don't really need to travel as much. I can do this management presentation from living room.
This was the day we didn't have even BlackBerries yet, right? We certainly didn't have laptops. You had a desktop at work, but it was the dial-up. I remember getting internet installed at my office. This was a long time ago. So it was I had to leave kind of the normal full-time workforce. And I did that for a few years, and then Long Point Capital, a private equity firm with headquarters in Detroit and New York, reached out to me and said, we're big enough now, we're on our second fund, and we're looking for someone to do business development full-time. Full-time meaning that person's only function. And so I told them, I said, listen, I need to go home at 3:00 every day. And they were like, fine. We think that's completely fine with you.
When was this?
That would have been 2002. Okay. I joined Long Point Capital in 2002. And that's where I learned how to do private equity business development. And
because you had started on the lending side.
I was on the lending side, right. So I got all my finance and running models, reps in while I was a lender, but not as an equity person. So I learned how to do, models. Even though I was business development, you still have to know how to run a model and know what factors impact it. So learned that at Long Point Capital. Many thanks to Jerry Boylan, my mentor and boss from Long Point. He was an excellent business development person. He had been doing it at Masco Corporation in a corporate development capacity before he left to start his own private equity fund with two other partners.
What made him excellent at the BD profession?
Genuinely enjoys other people, gregarious, outgoing, very, I would call on him when I was a lender, and this is how we knew each other. I would call on him as a lender at Masco Corporation. I'm an asset-based lender, right? Masco's a publicly traded corporation, but I figured this guy in corporate development, he's doing deals all the time. Masco's looking at deals and buying companies all the time. He doesn't need my debt capital, but he knows people that might. He travels in the circles that need my loan product. And so I would call him, I'm completely unimportant and irrelevant to him, and we both know it. But I would call him and like once a year, and 6 months later, on his drive up north for the weekend, he would call me back, or his secretary. This is back when people had individual secretaries. His secretary would call and say, "I have Jerry Boylan on the phone for you." I'd be great. So he was that type of person. He returned every call. He took any conversation. He tried to be as helpful to everyone who reached out, and he would call me back, and with zero return for him, right? I mean, he doesn't need my debt. But that's how we struck up our relationship. And then when Jerry left, because he wanted to start a private equity firm in 2000, well, he left in the late 90s, but they didn't hire a BD person until 2002. It was his idea to reach out to me. He said, "I remember how diligently you called on me when there was no way on God's green earth that I was going to use your debt, but I appreciated your diligence and the way you went about it, and we need a person like that right now to do private equity, to source deals for us, source equity deals." That's how I got into private equity. I'm eternally grateful to you, Jerry.
Well, you're still talking about it 20 years later.
Yeah.
The impact of that type of relationship building and how it's influenced your career. Let's go into the history of the BD profession. I mean, what is chapter 1 of business development, maybe within the private equity context?
Yeah, you should ask Jay Jester when he and David Malizia, when they started in this function, because that's when they were the early, and Bob Landis. He has his own private equity fund, but he was at Florida Capital Partners for a long time, and Glenn Oken. Ask them when they started. I think it was the late 90s, because when I started, and this is another great lesson on who can be your mentors, right, in your career. Jerry Boylan for sure. Another person younger than me, also at Long Point Capital at the time, Scott Hauncher. He said, and this was when the capital connections were just starting. They weren't even called that, but Chicago ACG, I believe, had the first kind of private equity standing behind a table and investment bankers, coming by and meeting. In advance of going to that, Scott Hauncher told me, and Bob Landis.
Yep.
Yes, Bob Landis when he started in this. He's also one of the early crew. He said, find Bob Landis, Jay Jester, and Dave Malizia and do what they do. He's like, that's what we want you to do. And I did. I watched those guys. I benchmarked them. I asked them for input. They're all so generous with their time. And, we were all competitors. Theoretically, over time, I realized the right company, the right private equity firms win the deal for the right reasons. It doesn't matter kind of how many people are competing, right? So you got to find the deal that's the right one for you, where you have an angle and an edge, and all the rest don't matter. Right. So
just because it says consumer,
Right.
consumer, same size equity check, same size. There's more to it.
There's a lot more to it.
That's just the surface.
Things that we like that maybe the client doesn't like about us or does like. It's so variable. But at the time, these guys were so helpful to me. And so I definitely was in on the early surge, but I did have a few people that I could learn from. Business development people were all about making connections and helping. And, the folks that were already doing it that I mentioned, they showed me the power of referring things. And, not everything's going to be right for everybody, to your point on 3 firms looking at the same consumer deal. That's how it started, and I really liked it. I like going into a room where I don't know anybody and seeing who new and interesting I can talk to and find out what they do and find out if I can help them. Another boss of mine along the way was Mike Beauregard at Huron Capital, and he has a saying that he instills in everybody, and it's really good for business development people: provide value first. When you meet somebody new, provide value to them before you ask them for anything or expect them to send you a deal or send you anything. Provide value first. And so that's another, things you learn and pick up from other people along the way. Use them. I do.
Did it take time to internalize that, or as part of your DNA? And I ask that because so much of, I think, especially earlier on in a career, we can be transactional.
Right. It's like, ask for the business. Everyone tells you that, right? I think that's really old school. And as a young person, you're taught that. Did you ask for the business? Did you ask for the business? Well, no, I haven't given them anything yet. What should be your response? It didn't take long for me, and anyone who has my personality, it really is like, you're probably doing that anyways, but it just helps you remember to do it every single time, and return the phone calls, and be happy to get on the phone with young people or new people entering our industry and helping them navigate their way and connecting them with people that might also be helpful to them.
What are some of the common mistakes that you find that young professionals in this industry are making?
Not asking questions and not asking for help. Feeling like they're in competition with the other associates, don't want to ask a question because they're afraid someone higher up will shut them down, or, oh, goodness, figure out you don't know everything. Crowdsourcing answers is great. Do it. Use your network, use your colleagues, use the other people in your firm. Ask questions. I mean, it really needs to, that to me, I feel as a young person, you're just really trying to prove yourself and carve out your niche in your firm. And I think the biggest mistake is not asking questions. We're trying to create a culture here. Everyone asks questions all the time. We're incredibly transparent here at Avance. We think it's critical to our firm's development. And we think that's the right way to do it.
Have you always been curious?
Yeah. I was as a kid, I was a voracious reader. I read a lot. I'm embarrassed to say I do not read enough nowadays.
Audible?
Too much. I don't enjoy Audible. Everyone says that. When I make the drive between Tampa and Miami, I could be doing Audible. I don't enjoy getting my content that way. I like to read a book.
Yeah. What's your favorite book, or kind of a group of books that you just maybe either always go back to, or you found really influential for?
I need to think about this. I'm trying to think of the last one that I couldn't put down.
The Avance PPM?
The Avance PPM. It's a page turner. I don't have an answer for you. You're gonna have to cut that. I really don't. I'm trying to think. I can't.
It's all right. We need the Avance PPM. So let's kind of go into, I think you ended off at Long Point, and just kind of go from there with the evolution of the career.
My time in 2000, so our mandate and what we invested in at Long Point was all building products businesses. Because of our ties and our knowledge to Masco, had a lot of building products. We had better knowledge than others of that space. However, we did not see the downturn coming, the housing bubble crisis. And at that time, everyone was already seeing it in our portfolios. If anybody had any building products businesses, we saw it earlier because we had more. And I remember going into Jerry's office and saying, Jerry, I think I have to find a new job. And he said, why? Because what are you talking about? And we at the time were at the end of our second fund. We were going to need to have some exits, which we had planned, right, for 2009 or whatever. We were going to need some exits. And I actually went, this was before the real bust in the fall of 2008. So I went in kind of the end of 2007, early 2008, said, Jerry, I think I need to find a new job. I said, with the housing downturn, this could last a year. This could last a whole year. We're out of money and we're going to have to wait a year for the market to come back, and then a year for our, companies to post positive numbers again, and then sell. I said, I don't have anything to do. We don't have any money. We're fully invested. And he said, huh. I never thought of it like that. And, he of course said, we're not going to let you go because of this situation. I just knew what the next couple of years were going to look like. And as a BD person, that's no fun. And at the exact same time, Huron Capital, Brian Demkowitz from Huron Capital reached out to me and said basically the same thing. And this is very common in the private equity world. We've just raised our third fund. We need somebody dedicated full-time to business development. We see what you're doing here at Long Point. Would you join us? And it was a very natural time. And Jerry completely understood. I mean, we're friends today. We're on a nonprofit together today.
What nonprofit?
The Detroit Police Athletic League. And he invited me to be on it's called Girls Changing the Game. And the Police Athletic League is multiple different sports. The idea is to get inner city kids into organized sports without it having to cost them. Because in many schools, many parents realize you got to pay. It's pay to play. You pay for your uniform, you pay to be on the baseball team, you pay to be on the cheer team, whatever. And so this is a nonprofit dedicated to making opportunities available. And, it's 2/3 boys that participate now. And the Girls Changing the Game Committee, it's our mandate to increase the number of girls playing sports. Playing sports is hugely crucial to success in business. You learn about competition. You learn about teamwork. You learn that every person on a team has a role, and not everybody on that team is a great, let's say we're talking, volleyball. Not everybody can smash the ball, but those us tall girls that maybe can slam the ball. We can't get down fast like someone smaller, quicker, the libero in the back row who's jumping all over. But you need both those people on your team, and one is really good at smashing and one is really terrible at it, and one is really good at digging the ball out and one is really terrible at that. And that's okay.
Do you think that you've been a more team sport player most of your life?
Yeah. I never did any individual sports. I played basketball and I played softball. And that's what was kind of available when...
It's interesting because I did golf for so long. And now, into endurance sports, it's very
solo, very solitary. But you learn the same things.
My old boss was right. I guess I am a lone wolf.
But you learn...
During my performance review for 6 years in a row, there was this common thing, you're a little bit too much of a lone wolf. You need to work on that.
You gravitate to the things that we're sort of right?
Well, it's interesting just how, sports, we don't have it in our company, but when you're looking at people to join Avance, do you factor in sports or types of competitive, or what are you looking for? when you're trying to hire, like what are the foundational attributes aside from the hard skills,
the quantitative or the functional skills? We're looking for well-rounded people. We're looking for well-rounded people with a diversity of experience. We know the diversity based on gender, ethnicity, member of the LGBTQ community, economic disadvantage. We know that all of these different experiences and groups bring different things of value, and it is definitely, the sum is the whole. Sum of the parts is greater than the parts individually. There's lots of studies that prove that. We want people also with diverse experiences. So maybe one individual is an avid, art collector, and one does, ultra marathons. Maybe one does, jujitsu, and maybe one is a voracious reader or lover of food and wine. No, I just remembered that on somebody's resume that I looked at.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm like,
I did it
cool.
for like 9 years.
Oh, you did?
6 days a week.
Whoa.
29 gyms worldwide. Like that was
your
my
thing.
meditation. It was crazy. Like no matter what I was going through in life, like how that, like went through my father's passing away and other, things in life. And no matter what, I would go. And it was just meditation. You tend not to think about other things when someone's trying to choke you out.
Yeah, well, there's that. There's that.
Too much focus.
So, I would not say having involvement in sports is a prerequisite to, to someone we would want to hire. But there are lots of studies that show, if you look at the top women in publicly traded companies, whether they're CEOs or on the boards, there is a very high correlation between those women having played sports as a girl. So moms, get your girls involved in sports in some capacity.
There we go. This brings up another good topic, which is I think the statistic is something like 4% of corporate boards have minority women or women. I forget what the exact, it might have been, probably higher for women, but I think it's like 4 or 5% have minority women on the corporate boards. But I think it brings up a larger topic, which is like if you have the argument that it is good, how do you actually change?
You try harder. You try harder. You can find quality folks, men and women of different ethnicities. You have to try harder, and we spend a lot of time on that. We spend a lot of time on trying to find diverse candidates because we think it will yield higher returns. So diversity also includes, Caucasian men and women. Diverse, everything is what we're looking for to bring all of these experiences together for the betterment of our fund performance. Try harder I'm not trying to be glib. You do have to try harder. You have to network in different circles. You have to provide value to those different circles so they'll even bother or care about maybe referring you a minority woman board member or CEO candidate or VP of sales or whatever it is. It requires harder work on networking. We spend a lot of time here interviewing, talking with people who can help provide us leads, funding different causes that can help bubble up more and more of those candidates and direct them to us. So it's a lot of time spent on that. We have a wonderful advantage of being a first-time fund is that we don't have a giant portfolio to manage right now. We can spend the time on these foundational things that are core to our mandate, our mission, and how we want to build this firm.